but it's working here.
Hey.
Hello. Hi. It is Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday.
I forgot what day it was. It's Tuesday, so it's time for the comic book preview stream where we're going to talk about the comics that drop tomorrow. Hey, Keystone, hey, it's good to have you here. Yeah, so let's talk about comic books.
Yeah.
And Thor is with us today, as you can see.
No new Thor comics coming out tomorrow. I was a little disappointed.
So it doesn't quite work, but I'm still into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
all right, what do we got, man? What do we got?
Let's see what we got here. You
I'm
know,
shaking the hell out of the table.
whenever possible, I always like to start
Hey,
off
a
with a
facsimile.
facsimile.
Is it my imagination, or is there just a lot more facsimiles happening right now?
Is it my imagination, or is that exactly what you said last time I had a facsimile? And the answer is it is not my imagination. But no, I think you are correct. I think that Marvel and DC have realized that there's a market.
People love it
for these. People like the older comics. I'm somebody who's I collect back issues, and a lot of these older things, they're just a little bit out of my price range, and I'm also somebody who values quantity over quality. Like, I'm not just going to buy $1,000 comic book just to have $1,000 comic book, whereas I want to actually have the run and read it all. So these facsimile books work perfectly for that. And this X-Men book that we have here first is there we go. This is a pretty good example of that. This is this is what's known as a key issue.
Oh, a key
It's the first appearance of many characters. It's kind of the beginning of the first Dark Phoenix saga, or the first Dark Phoenix saga. The Dark Phoenix saga. And
Dark Phoenix.
It's the first appearance of like Emma Frost, the villains, the Hellfire Club, and also a plucky little character who goes on to be really popular, Kitty Pryde.
Okay.
This is like her first appearance.
What's her power again?
She can phase in and out of solid objects.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think the scene is in this book where her powers manifest and she falls through her bed down to the next room, the bottom floor, and it's freaking her out. She doesn't know what's going on, so the X-Men come up to help her. This issue also has one of my favorite scenes, which kind of highlights some of the ways that the book has changed since they brought it back in the 70s, because the original 60s version was very focused on the school aspect. Like, Professor X was the headmaster of this private school, and they were all students, and he was training them to use their powers. And the new version of the X-Men that started in 1975, they were more like a standard superhero team. Most of them were adults. Like, even the X-Men kids from the original series, they'd grown up. Like, Cyclops is an adult now. And there's a really good scene with Wolverine, everybody's favorite hothead, anti-hero tough guy. And if you want to bring the camera back down in here just to show you,
maybe.
I love this. He gets out of the danger room and he's all mad, and he storms out of here, and he tells Cyclops that tell Professor X to quit riding him because he's not a kid, he's an adult. And Professor X is he's punishing Wolverine for storming out of the session. And he's like, Cyclops, notify Wolverine that his childish outburst will cost him 10 demerits.
Wow.
And Cyclops is like, that's not going to work on Wolverine. He's a grown man. He's not a student.
Right.
So it is interesting, though, because this is the issue then that introduces Kitty Pryde, as I said. So they kind of get back to having the kid characters with her in the book. And this is just from that golden period of X-Men when it was just so good. So if you're like classic X-Men, definitely want to check this out. Another facsimile that comes out tomorrow from DC is All American Comics.
All American Comics.
Number 16. This is the first appearance of the Green Lantern.
Oh.
This is the Golden Age Green Lantern, not the one that you saw in the Ryan Reynolds movie.
The amazing Ryan Reynolds.
And
it costs $6.99.
It costs
back in the day.
Back then, no, I'm sure it cost 10 cents back in the day, but
that's pretty expensive.
That's inflation for you.
Inflation. They'll do it.
I just talked about the X-Men facsimiles and how cool it is to have the key issues. One of the things that I really like that DC's doing with these facsimiles is they're reprinting issues that are just not widely available just because they're so old, even to the point where the ones that are around are just in
they're
terrible, falling apart condition. Yeah. So it is really cool to see these Golden Age comics, not just because you get to see the very first Green Lantern story, but you can see, the other comics that appear in it are also preserved. And I really like just being able to read just like comics from 80 years ago, you
Mhm.
know, just kind of seeing how they were. And the Golden Age Green Lantern is a character that I probably never thought about once in my entire life. You know,
You just don't really care about Green Lantern?
well, that's true. I haven't really cared about Green Lantern that much. I was always more of a Marvel kid. I
Mhm.
appreciate what Green Lantern is now, and it's interesting to see how the modern day sci-fi version of the character, like the space police angle,
Mhm.
had grew out of this weird Golden Age version where he was just a guy who found a magic ring and it just gave him weird powers. Like it's really ill defined because you know it was a comic book for kids in
Right,
1940.
yeah. The kids don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Kids don't care. But it is. I was a little surprised, like looking at it. The lantern, the iconic lantern that's stayed with the mythos. Like you can kind of see it on the first page here. Like that's still present. Like from panel one, that's still like just part of the mythology of the character. So that's kind of neat just to see how it's evolved with it. Another thing that I liked, I noticed he doesn't get his costume until the very end. Like he
Oh.
goes on an adventure, and then
It's just a regular dude running
it's just a
around.
regular dude running around with his power ring, and then he's like afraid that people will recognize him. So his idea is to come up with a costume that is so bizarre that once people have seen it, they'll never forget about it. So I always thought the costume looked stupid. Where I'm like,
Is it that?
It's this, yeah.
That's
It's
not
like
that bizarre, is it?
it's a red shirt with like green pants and a purple cape
Yeah.
and a green inlay. Like
Mhm.
it's just really it's garish, I guess you could
it's
say.
not very.
So to be fair, I always thought like, oh, they just designed stupid costumes back
Mhm.
in 1940.
Mhm.
You know, that's what they had to
yeah,
work with.
yeah.
But there actually is. I kind of like that they gave it. There's a plot point
A
where
reason.
he was actually trying to come up with a really garish costume that would distract people from his like. It's you're just so focused on how
Yeah,
hideous and
yeah,
terrible it
it
is
looks.
that you're not really concerned of seeing like remembering his face, which that's actually a really like interesting angle to the superhero costume idea that I had never considered. And so I'm learning something new every day
That's
when I'm reading
something. Yeah, it's.
these reprints.
Well, now
So
I know. And what do I do with this
oh,
information? I
man,
don't
it's
know.
just with you. It's just gonna be stuck with
It's
you.
a part of me now.
All right, so let's move on to some of the other newer books that are coming out. Although this isn't a new book, this is a trade paperback, new printing that's coming out tomorrow. Possibly one of my favorite comic book series, one of my favorite superhero comic book series. This is Astro City Metro Book Volume 4. If you've never read Astro City and you like superhero comics, but you feel like maybe you've kind of grown out of them,
Mhm.
or if just like the standard corporate superhero comic just feels really stale and repetitive, Astro City is the book you need to read. It is actually one of the best superhero comics possibly ever made. And that means that's even
Wow.
going up against the classic characters and the classic stories told with those characters. I really, really love Astro City. It's written by Kurt Busiek, who's one of the best genre writers working in comic books today. Drawn by Brent E. Anderson, who is a really good artist. He drew God Loves, Man Kills, one of the early X-Men graphic novels. And all the covers and the designs are by Alex Ross, who hardly needs an introduction. He's he's that guy. Yeah. But I haven't read book 4 yet. I'm looking forward to it. This is probably top of my reading list. I love this series so much. It is the superhero universe how Marvel and DC pretend their universes are, where it actually is. It's stories about a bunch of superhero characters that have existed in this city, Astro City,
Mhm.
for 100 years,
Yeah.
and because it's not stuck with the corporate IP problem of like Spider-Man is popular, so he has to be around forever.
Mhm.
You can just tell stories about the superheroes that were around in the 40s, the heroes that were around in the 60s, 70s, up into the present day, and it all kind of connects. It has its own rich history. It really is just one of the most epic superhero comics you could ever read. Highly recommend
Epic,
it.
even.
Yeah, epic. That's the word I have to use to describe it. Okay, up next, let's get to some of the issues that are coming out tomorrow. We're starting off with Dan's favorite comic, Money Shot. I'm going to be very. I'm just not even going to
Don't even open it.
I'm not
Don't
even
open
going to
it.
open this comic. The cover alone is pretty provocative.
It's pretty
But
risque.
I really like. So what I like about this comic, clearly, if you're just looking at this color, there's a cover. There's a bit of an Archie parody going on, keeping in line with Cherry Pop Tart, the character that is. I know I'm trying to and of course it's Dan's favorite comic.
We'll talk
So
about that later on my stream.
Why is this your favorite comic, Dan?
It's just really well drawn.
But it's also funny.
It's really
I
funny.
think it's pretty
actually,
funny.
it's got a very. I mean, for what it is, the sense of humor is pretty smart.
Yeah.
Like it's smart humor with I like the colors. I
Yeah,
do.
it is pretty colorful.
the colors.
Yes. Good. It's a funny comic.
It's funny.
I have been enjoying it. I like that. Like I mentioned earlier, Cherry Pop Tart is in it, and she's an old independent character that was initially a raunchy parody of Archie comics, and so that's kind of woven into the story of how that character is in here. And as you can see on the cover, there's a whole Archie parody thing, like this character here.
Looks
You want
kinda
to show?
like
He's got like
Jughead.
a little Jughead thing going on.
Yeah,
So it's like the characters are like in the Archie world, but there's a bunch of shenanigans going on that you probably won't read in a normal Archie comic book. All right, let's move on. Oh man,
Is your wig getting you?
it's wig hair.
It looks good though.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Who's the guy that plays Thor right now? Chris
Chris Hemsworth.
Hemsworth.
You
You look
know,
just like him.
I've been told that on more than one occasion.
Yeah,
believe
even
it or not.
without the wig. It's,
Yeah,
it's like,
especially
it's like looking into a mirror.
especially that movie where he's like really fat.
Yeah. Hey, golden
Flowing
flowing
locks.
locks.
That's
Absolutely. We love it.
right.
Thanks for being here.
That's someone very special to me.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah. But she doesn't like it when I give her shouts out on the
Oh,
on the
okay.
stream.
So we won't talk
we're
about
not gonna draw
We're
attention
not even
to
going to
it.
go there. We're not going to go
We're
there.
not even gonna mention it. We're just gonna talk about a few of the books that are in my poll today that I do recommend. I'm reading Jean Grey. This is issue number 3, 4-issue series. I've said every time this book has come out, I don't really read a lot of the newer X-Men stuff, but I'm reading this one because it's written by Louise Simonson. She's a veteran writer, and it's all focused on Jean Grey, which is a character she knows very well. All I can say about this issue is I think I remember I talked about our friend and coworker Abby, who is a younger reader. And she read this series and she didn't really like the first issue because she didn't have the connection to the 30-year-old stories the way I did from when I read them as a kid.
There's already a lot behind it.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to it. And I think when I got to this issue, I started to kind of feel what she was feeling because this issue focuses on some of the story stuff that's part of Jean's continuity that I'm not a huge fan of. And so I've never really, it doesn't mean anything to me, so I don't pay attention to it that much either. I don't even like a lot of fandom. It's like you have your own headcanon of kind of like what the characters are.
Yeah.
And this is stuff that I just don't even think about in connection to the character. So as I'm reading it, I'm just kind of like, oh, this is probably how Abby felt when she read the first issue.
Yeah. Zero connection to the storyline.
Right. That being said,
not my Jean Grey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hashtag not my Jean Grey. But it's still really good. I'm enjoying it. And looking for it. I can't see what that emoji is that just got shared.
It's like
it's a
dude going.
a thumbs up.
Yeah,
I thought it was a
thumbs up.
potato.
Well, maybe it's
It's a potato giving a thumbs up. All right. Another quick update. Plot holes.
Everyone loves plot holes.
I've been enjoying it.
People
I had
are going
to get
nuts for that.
Yeah, they are. The covers are great. I picked out the He-Man cover myself because He-Man. I'm from the 80s. He-Man was. I was the target audience for He-Man. But this is I don't want to talk too much about this issue. It's solid. It's really good. I like that this comic, it moves along really like that. It's tight pacing. Like it moves pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it's just a 5-issue series, so you can kind of feel where this is going.
Yeah.
But
it has a purpose.
Exactly. It has a purpose. It doesn't feel like any space is wasted. Just every scene is like a nice scene. You get just enough characterization. You get just enough little action stuff in there. Each issue kind of has some flashback scene to give you a little more insight into the characters. It's really good, and the covers are a lot of fun. So if you've been following this series, I'm sure you're gonna enjoy it. And if you haven't read it, you might want to check it out.
Check it out.
All right.
All right.
Next up, another book that I've been talking about every time
Doom
I
Patrol.
see it. Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
Number 7 of 7. This book is possibly one of the best current superhero comics coming out right now.
Okay.
And I don't know how often I say that.
I mean,
I
once in a great while.
Once in a while, but
Yeah.
I genuinely really, really like this book.
You said that about Doom Patrol before.
Yes, and it remains so. So this is the final issue of the story arc. The character, I just love the character designs are a lot of fun. Like I'm sure I talked about it the last time we flipped through the previous issue, but this villain, she has the power to have all powers, but she doesn't have powers that you're thinking of. So to fight her, they have to just constantly start naming random powers to prevent her from using them.
Interesting.
And so there's just like lots of weird stuff in it. Just so much bizarre stuff.
You like weird stuff. Right?
I like weird stuff. Like I said, it's like the X-Men, but even weirder.
More weird.
Yeah, more weird. And so this is like a solid action-packed conclusion to the story that had been set up and going along. And there's kind of a last page twist. Not a twist, but like a tease
What a twist.
Yeah. It ends with as I've complained a lot that this issue is the last issue of the series. It's number 7 of 7, but it ends with like a Doom Patrol will return, hopefully sooner than later. And then there's a final page tease of like what could be in the future. And it was it's pretty interesting, pretty shocking. We'll see. We'll see.
A shocking ending.
I don't want to spoil it.
Don't spoil it.
I just was. It's like tied into the greater DC universe in a way that this book hasn't been much.
So it's a big surprise.
It is. It is a big surprise. I don't even know if it constitutes. That's how out of touch I am with the DC universe. I don't know if it constitutes a first appearance or not. I just don't. I don't know.
Okay.
So,
well, now I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to read this comic at all, but now I want to know.
Now you need to know.
I mean, I'll just look at the last few pages of that one.
Just skip to the end. Okay, another one from my poll. This week was the good books that came out this week are pretty much books that are all in my poll. So there's only a few new comics that I'm going to talk about. There's another one I'm going to talk about briefly here.
Taste, this guy.
I think I do personally, if I can say so myself. Conan the Barbarian. I've been loving this new series. Written by Jim Zub, art by Robert De La Torre. I've been getting the what do they call
Conan?
Yes,
I came at the right time.
You sure did. I've been getting these what are they called? The retro covers, I think, or something like that, where they're all done up in the style of previous artists that have worked on Conan. This cover is by Kerry Norton. It's absolutely
not
beautiful.
A facsimile, but a retro style.
Yes, exactly. And this comic is just it's the best Conan has been in a long time. This is best in life.
Correct.
Yes. Like the art is
that's old school.
It's so good, and it's such a I love comic books, and I don't like to just boil it down to just like whether or not it has good art. But a lot of times that really is what makes a good comic.
Yeah.
Like a good story is a good story, but it goes nowhere if it doesn't have not just great art, but art that is right for the story. I think that's a thing that a lot of corporate comics kind of miss. Where there's just a lot of artists for hire, and there's so much back and forth of like who's available, who's cheaper, who's willing to work with such and such, and whereas like this is just the creative team is just in complete synergy. I think Zub is killing it with the writing. He's really just channeling Robert Howard, the original Conan the Barbarian creator, and the artist is just absolutely perfect for Conan. It's one of my favorite books coming out monthly, honestly.
That's cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. And if you're, there's a lot of Conan fans out there, and Conan material is kind of always like hit or miss.
Because anybody can make
anybody,
Conan.
Yeah, and a lot of people have like different. Like I love the movie, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Yeah.
But it's not really like Conan. Like believe it or not, it doesn't really get the character of Conan correctly.
What?
It doesn't.
What about the Jason Momoa Conan?
I don't have much to say about that movie one way or the other, but it's just I just want to say that this comic is the correct Conan. Like if you're a fan of the stories,
only true Conan.
It really is. Like and not just like the original Robert Howard pulp fiction, but like if you liked the the Marvel comic series that launched in the 70s
Mhm.
by Barry Windsor Smith. Like, you will like this. There's a lot of good Conan out there, and this stands with the best of them.
There you go.
Okay,
You heard it
another
here first. Arnie sucks. Jason Momoa sucks.
Arnold doesn't suck. That movie is brilliant. I absolutely love that movie, but it's not Conan.
You got James Earl Jones turning into
so
a
good.
giant snake.
It's so good. It's beautiful. All right, so
Hey,
a few other books
I'm a fan of great comics.
If you're a fan of great comics, you love Void
You're
Rivals.
gonna love Void Rivals.
I think I'm just kind of talking about this issue out of obligation.
Yeah.
I think I said previously that I was going to give it 6 issues and see where it goes.
Yeah, where are we at?
And this is issue
number
5.
Okay, we're close.
And we're close. And that's what's funny is, like, I feel very much like, I don't know, Kirkman's pacing is just so predictable that I feel like this story is moving too slowly. There's just like little drops of stuff that's going on in the story. I think it spends a lot of time just kind of like, there's this whole scene here where I'm not really sure what this scene has to do with anything other than to remind you that it's in the universe of the Transformers.
The Transformers are around.
Yeah, and
not necessarily part of the plot or the story.
Correct.
But they're around.
But I'm sure it's gonna tie in some way, kind of loosely. There is like a little, like, I won't spoil it, but there's like a little tease here where it's like, okay, I can see where this is kind of going. But it's just, I'm not really super moved by the story. It's fine. I think the characters are kind of boring, honestly. Like, I would like it more if it had more interesting characters, or at least interesting design. Which is not to say that the art isn't good. I actually think Lorenzo De Felici, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's a really good artist. Like, it's a good looking comic. It looks like an Image comic book, but I know it's all just building to like the big plot point that's going to happen in issue 6, and then that's going to be it's supposed to be like the oh my gosh moment, and then you're gonna have to read more, and then the next
split off into different books, right?
We'll see. I don't know. You know what? I will give Kirkman this with this series, like with this relaunch with Transformers and G.I. Joe and Void Rivals. There is a sense where I do, like, anything can happen. I still think it's fairly predictable just if you're familiar with his style. Sure. But that doesn't mean he's capable of just subverting your expectations and just going crazy with it just because he can do that.
Yeah.
And also the advantage he has is, like, if the characters aren't that interesting, it's built in that it's tied into the Transformers universe. You could just bring in some ringers.
Just keep stringing people along with that Transformers nugget.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, these guys aren't that cool, but the Transformers are going to show up eventually.
I mean, there's nothing stopping him from just making a Transformer like a main part of the cast in some way. Yeah. Which that was the tease in the first issue. I thought that's what was going to happen, and then it didn't. And maybe that's why I've just been less than thrilled with these 5 issues, where I almost would have preferred something that was just a little more not blatant, but even just I don't know,
not so coy.
Exactly.
With what he's presenting.
Like, with him just being like
he's like in the background, like, I got something that's so good, it's going to be good.
That's kind of what it feels like.
But he's got to keep everyone hanging on for long enough. And how long are people going to hang on?
I feel like it would have had a bigger impact if this book just came out and it was like, boom, Secret Transformers book.
Yeah.
We'll see. Well, like I said, I said I was going to give it. It is fine. It's fine. I said I was going to do issue 6.
Fine.
So next month, that's going to be the make or break issue for me. I think.
Yeah. You need to do something. Do something to move it along a little more.
And I know it's I know it will happen in that issue. If it doesn't, that would truly be a subversion of my expectations.
That would, like, nothing. It's like the Seinfeld of comics. Like, nothing happens.
yeah, exactly. All right.
Hey, more Green Lantern.
I got 2 number 1 issues here. So, Green Lantern number 1. This is
the purple and the red.
Look at that. That's, you know what?
Yeah, it's like spot on.
That's the Image.
I love it.
From the from the issue where he debuts the costume. Now I'm gonna waste all of our time.
Yeah.
Like, look at that. Like,
that's great. No, that's great.
That's pretty good. Just complete recreation of the first appearance of the costume on this
That's
on
really
this
neat.
cover.
I
So
like that.
clearly,
See, now I know.
now you know why they released this.
Now I
also.
know, yeah.
It's just like a little extra
So
advertisement.
nerds can be like, oh, it's a look.
Like if
He's
you're
standing there like in the book.
if you're into Green Lantern, but it also like if you're like, oh, Green Lantern #1, I'm kind of interested in this character. I've never
Mhm.
read about Alan Scott Green Lantern
Mhm.
specifically. Well, boom, there's the original first
Yeah.
appearance on the shelf right next to this, so you can buy both of them.
Yeah.
So this book, this is written by Tim Sheridan
Mhm.
and drawn by Cyan Tormey.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
as I said before, I don't know nothing about Alan Scott Green Lantern. I know he's in the Justice Society of America, which is like the lame version of the Justice League.
Okay.
From I'm going to offend a lot of fans
Uh-oh.
here by like talking trash on them. I don't know. They were, to me, they were just the epitome of like why DC is uncool and why Marvel is cool.
Mhm.
You know, they had a bunch of characters that looked like Green Lantern on their team.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
but I think I talked about the Sandman comic that came out a few weeks ago. And what I like that DC is doing with these is that they're doing these Golden Age characters set in the Golden Age. So the comics are set in 1940 or the early 40s roughly, and this is no exception. So this is another part of their 1940s continuity that they're setting up. And I think like the big thing to talk about with this issue, it's kind of, I guess you could maybe say it's the elephant in the room, is that a few years ago there was a little bit of controversy because DC decided to make Alan Scott a gay character. And he was never originally presented like that. I am not familiar with the character enough to know if there was ever any like subtext that you could read into it to maybe like, oh, if you think about it now in retrospect, it kind of like, I have no idea. But that was something that it rattles a few cages. It ruffles some feathers. Mostly, I think the most sympathetic reason, other than the obvious reasons that I'm not even going to give the dignity of talking about, is I do have like a general distaste for when characters are changed from their original version. I know there's a sense of like characters need to be updated for the times, but to me, it always just has this problem of it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel genuine or like it's being done in earnest. Because you have this issue where DC owns this character. He was created in 1940. He's literally an 80-year-old character. And they have to do something with it. So there's just this sense of like, what can we do to draw attention? And it's like, that's an easy thing to do. And that's why a lot of people will, like I said, being generous, they'll just accuse it of being pandering or disingenuous.
Sure.
So that is something that like concerns me. I don't like when characters are changed from the way the original creators created them. And I know that gets a little murky in comic books because creator and ownership is so removed. Like creators, well, first of all, the creators for Alan Scott are dead and have been for a long time. And so now this is just a character that exists in...
How grim.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just
it's
true.
An old character, yeah.
But also they never had ownership of him. So they never... Sorry, I got to flip my hair. They never had any say in how the character is presented.
Sure.
But, it's still just something whenever I see it, I do kind of always roll my eyes. And it's not just about the character being gay. I mean, whenever they up like shocking new developments for the character, you just have to like Peter Parker getting married, honestly, with Spider-Man. That was a big thing. And that a lot of people were a lot of people, I should say, working for Marvel in editorial have been against that for like 30 years. They've been trying to undo it.
Wow.
And so then undoing it...
They don't want the guy to get married?
They don't. No, they want him to be like kind of forever young, even though he's not a teenager anymore. They don't want him... Like when you're married, you're no longer wish fulfillment for children. For some reason, I'm not sure I totally follow that logic, but I think the idea is they want him to be like a young character because he's more marketable, more licensable.
Yeah.
Like the Miles Morales Spider-Man is. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. All I'm really saying is that you get into like murky waters when you try to make drastic changes to a character, whether it be to update them or just like to make them relevant or to just... Because really the only reason they do it is just to find a way to sell this comic to people. And it doesn't feel like it's a story that somebody actually wants to tell, whereas they're trying to retroactively come up with a reason to put a spin on this character so that you can sell it. All of that being said, this was a pretty good issue. Like, I actually really liked it.
Oh
and
man,
and despite my little long-winded
that
rant
was
there,
that was a little long-winded.
I
That's right. I get what you're saying. I
thank
feel
you.
you.
Thank you.
I think it's great. Things change.
Oh, yeah.
Everything changes. And at some point, maybe the original Green Lantern was like completely different, and then like a few issues in, they're like, "Oh, let's change it." Back in the 40s, you know.
Well,
like,
that's like it's interesting that you say that because Green Lantern is actually one of the biggest examples of the character being drastically changed in the '60s.
mhm.
Where this, like
Oh,
I'm talking
okay.
about, this is the golden age version of Green Lantern.
Mhm.
The reason he's specifically referred to as Alan Scott Green Lantern because he's a very unique version of Green
Mhm.
Lantern. In the '50s, I should say.
Mhm.
I'm blanking on their names and how embarrassing for me. But it was kind of the beginning of the Silver Age in the late '50s.
Mhm.
That's when the character was retooled into the sci-fi setting,
Okay.
where the ring came from space
Mhm.
and it was an alien that gave it to him, and they created the whole mythology of like the Space Corps, the Green Lantern Corps,
Mhm.
and like that's a drastic departure from the original version of Green Lantern. So again, it's not that I'm opposed to it in any way. I am just a really cynical person, and so whenever I see changes, I'm always just like, how's this going to work? Because
Right.
it has the potential to just bomb horribly
Mhm.
and just be like an embarrassing thing that is now forever a part of the continuity, and that'll just be like a footnote whenever you're reading the Wikipedia entry.
Mhm.
But that's again, I'm with you. I agree. Things change, and I have to say, I thought this issue was really really good.
Yeah.
I again, I thought they embraced the aspect of the character being gay because it works really well in the context of it being the 1940s. Because that's another thing where, like, if you'll forgive me, when like a character comes out today and they're just like, "Behold, we have a gay character,"
Mhm.
it's kind of a double-edged sword because in many ways it's like that's so passe. Like
Mhm.
we have lots of gay characters
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
and it's not that interesting. Not to
Yeah.
say that it's not worth writing about,
No,
but it's
I mean,
not
I think as a society, we've done a lot to normalize sexuality in all its forms.
exactly. So you set this story in 1940, and
Mhm.
it takes on a completely different
Sure.
context.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that I think that works really well with the classic tropes, the superhero tropes of having a secret identity,
double life.
a
Yeah.
double life, and so you have aspects like there's your hero side, and then there's your everyday persona. And I like that this character has this added burden, if you will,
Mhm.
of this like triple identity, like this
Mhm.
third secret that he's keeping. It works really well. It adds for a lot of
Okay.
like really great character drama. It's a lot of good. It's mostly a character piece. There's a little bit of action,
Yeah.
but it was really really well written. I have to say, like for as I said at the top of the show, a character that I've never thought once about.
Yeah. Now you know.
This is a pretty solid
pretty
first
good.
issue. So I think I would say give it a chance. I don't know if there are any classic Alan Scott stories out there. I'm sure the DC fanboys can school me.
Yeah.
But if I also have to imagine that if these classic stories exist, they come from like the 1950s or at best the 1980s when they were doing their multiverses and I can't even begin to explain to you what was going on with Crisis in Infinite Earths, Dan. So I'm not even going to try.
That's not even true.
Yeah, Green Lantern #1, good book. Highly recommend it.
Boom.
All right, we're on our last book, and I always
Nothing is far away.
I ask a coworker to pick out a book for me, and somebody picked Gone by Jock.
We don't know who.
Oh, it was Celeste, but it was on accident. She
Mhm.
didn't actually tell me to get this book. She was a customer called and was asking about it,
Mhm.
and I didn't even realize it was on the shelf. And so she told me to go get this book for a customer,
Mhm.
and then I went and got one for myself
'Cause it
too
looks
because
pretty
it looks
interesting.
really good.
Yeah.
So this is by the Distillery, which is a new publisher. I didn't get to talk about the first issue they put out a month ago because September was such a huge week, and I probably already had like 15 books on my stack,
Mhm.
and it was an anthology that was essentially an introduction to all of the different books that they're going to be publishing in the future.
Mhm.
So I kind of skipped over it. It had a lot of interesting looking things, but I figured I'll just talk about the books when they come out.
Yeah.
And so now we're doing that. So this first book is called Gone by Jock, who is a artist that I really really like,
Just
and
Jock.
just Jock. That's
Uh-huh.
his pen name.
That's cool.
And this is a cool, I don't know what you would call it. It's a sci-fi story for sure.
Mhm.
The basic setup is this. I love this beautiful double page spread. And that's the thing is too, is like we talked last week about the whichever the Forged that
Mhm.
has in the giant book format.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
this one is also in the giant book format. And I almost feel like this is where books are going, like in this
Yeah.
bigger format,
It just
which
seems like so much more dramatic.
it does.
Epic.
It feels like it fits the stories better. You have, and ironically, like Jock is he's not somebody who fills his page with a lot of panels. Like most of these pages still stick to a 4 or 5 panel layout or less, but they look really good. Like his art is really solid. The setup for this is a pretty standard. I would say pretty standard
Mhm.
sci-fi setting where it's like I don't know if it's exactly a desert planet, but it's like a junkie planet where there's like poor people that scavenge
Yeah.
stuff, and the main character joins a scavenging group. They're going to jump onto this like luxury space cruiser that's
As you do,
landing
yeah.
for stuff, and turns out that there's some revolutionaries in their
Ooh,
crew.
I like a
And
revolutionary.
so there's like some class talk about the poor people struggling to scrape by a living on this planet, and all the rich
Yeah.
people on the luxury cruise.
Where would they ever get those ideas? To write
I
about?
know, yeah. It's just
It's just so like not reality.
No,
like,
it's you have
such
to
a fantastical story.
You have
that
to
they've
read
come
about
up
it
with.
in science fiction, but it's. I like the big format a lot because
Yeah,
you really can
it's pretty
enjoy
epic. That's
Jock's art.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it's a pretty. I really liked it. This is a good book. Beautiful art. The story moves along at a good pace. You kind of get to the end, and again, I'm not going to spoil what happens, but there was. This is all kind of a lot of this issue is just like a tease of like there's something bigger going on here than just. So the main character is this little girl, and she actually gets stowed away on the ship. They were just trying to sneak aboard so they could like steal supplies, and then some stuff
She's
happens.
Like, I'm trying to get out of here.
And now she's stuck on the ship as it travels across the galaxy.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, so it's a nice setup. Like it's got some classic, like almost pirate themes because she's like stowed away on the ship, so she has to like crawl around and like the vents theme. And like she has to scavenge a life on the ship. So because of course there's people in the ship that are looking for stowaways, and and also they're concerned about other saboteurs being on the ship. It's really good. This is definitely, if you like, I don't know what I would call this. Not necessarily hard science fiction, but it felt more in the vein of hard sci-fi, more so than like Forged, which has a lot of like space opera elements. There's like clone girl magic, and
like almost alternate future, real future, near future.
Yes. So it's a really good book. I'm definitely going to keep following it, and I'm sure you'll see it again on this stream, the next issue that comes out.
Nice.
All right, man.
That's all of them.
That's all I got.
We did it.
We blasted through them.
We did blast through them. Well, that was excellent, man. I appreciate you, Thor. Back to Asgard or wherever with you. Thank you for hanging out with us. Go ahead and check out your comic book store tomorrow for all the books we talked about and others. If you don't buy them here at Fantasy Books and Games, buy them somewhere because comics are great and there's something for everybody.
That's right. And you know what else we should say? Which we never do because
what don't we ever do?
What we don't ever do. If you're watching this stream on YouTube, you should comment, like, subscribe, and hit the bell.
We never say that.
And do all that stuff. I don't even know what it is.
You do all the stuff. Like it.
Do all the stuff.
Subscribe to it. Hit the notification so whenever the new video comes out, you can watch it right away.
Yeah.
And if you're here on Twitch, I hope you're subscribing and I hope you're commenting. And it's awesome that you're here. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Bye. Oh.